levee authorities, you just name it. And then it extends out to the faith-based community and other organizations who always step up and perform valiantly. And I want to thank them on behalf of the state of Louisiana. At present, we've reopened a total of 107 floodgates of the 601 that were closed. We have begun opening floodgates in Lafourche and Terrebonne, as well as several floodgates within the hurricane risk reduction system within the greater New Orleans area, including the Western Closure Complex. You will recall, and you're going to hear from Chip Klein shortly, the chairman of the CPRA. This was the first time that the risk reduction system was completely closed off and buttoned up. And I'm sure that we're going to be able to get a report, perhaps not tonight, but soon, on how it performed from here. At least it appeared to perform extremely well. Altogether, with search and rescue across the state of Louisiana, 93 individuals were saved from 11 parishes. I would point out that 48 of those came from one facility that was evacuated between 2 o'clock this morning and 6 o'clock this morning in Iberia Parish. That was the Iberia Medical Center. And I want to thank all of the individuals who were so helpful in making sure that that evacuation happened timely and very, very smoothly. We currently have 177 coaches. By tomorrow, all of the coaches will be returned. We will retain the paratransit units until all of the individuals with medical needs who are currently being sheltered, and I think we have 88 of these individuals who are being sheltered in the Rapides Parish mega facility until they get returned to the nursing home in Morgan City. I'm sorry, in St. Mary Parish, not in Morgan City. And then we will keep whatever paratransit units that we need to move any other medically fragile people. We also have 140 school buses that will be returned by close of business tomorrow, and I want to personally thank all of the school districts who loaned their buses to us, and it's good that we were able to have those to increase our ability to move folks as might have been necessary. When it comes to power outages, we've been in constant contact with the Public Service Commissioner and the various electricity providers around the state. We know that since the storm started, they have restored service to about 188,000 customers, and many of those customers were restored more than once. And so the total number of outages were greatly in excess of 188,000. The severe weather we experienced today through South Louisiana has caused additional damage and slowed the restoration process because bucket trucks can't operate until the winds are reduced below a certain level so that those linemen can be safe. However, crews are still encountering challenges across some areas of the state of Louisiana, and as quickly as they are able to engage, they are doing so. And so we believe that power will be restored relatively quickly for most of the areas in the state of Louisiana without power now. Those being focused in Assumption, Iberia, and in St. Mary Parish. I do want to remind everyone that down power lines do present an extremely dangerous hazard. You should always assume that the lines are live. And don't go near them. Certainly don't touch them or allow anything to come into contact with them. If you're in an area that has experienced down power lines, please be extremely cautious when venturing out. There will be state office closures tomorrow in 3 parishes, and only 3 parishes, those being St. Mary, Assumption, and Iberia. And again, primarily this is because of the power outages that we continue to see in those areas. All other state offices will be open. We have determined that for this particular disaster event, this will be our last full unified command group meeting. I will have a smaller, more informal meeting tomorrow morning here at 9 o'clock. Should there be a need to address the press, we will make sure that you are aware of that. Right now, we don't anticipate that, however. Again, I want to thank all of the first responders, state agencies, the GOSEP employees, all of our federal partners, and all of the local officials who have done so much to serve the state of Louisiana during this particular disaster. They have all done an exceptional job. Now, I'm going to be followed with briefings to be given you by Chip Klein, the chairman of the CPRA. He'll be followed by Sean Wilson, Secretary of the Department of Transportation and Development. Secretary Walters of DCFS will brief after Secretary Wilson. Secretary Gee will follow, and General Curtis of the National Guard will follow, and then Commissioner Mike Strain of the Department of Ag and Forestry. Once Commissioner Strain completes his remarks, then we will entertain your questions. Thank you.
So as the governor noted in his remarks, our hurricane protection systems around South Louisiana function just as we hoped they would. This was the first time in the history of the hurricane's risk reduction system around the greater New Orleans area where we had all floodgates closed and operated the Western Closure Complex. So that system performed quite well, even though we did not see the storm surge that we had originally expected in the greater New Orleans area. Additionally, the Morganza to the Gulf Hurricane Protection System, where the state of Louisiana and Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes over the last few years have invested hundreds of millions of dollars to raise levees in those systems around the greater, around Terrebonne and Lafourche areas, as well as major floodgates and pump stations around that area. The areas in Terrebonne Parish where you did see overtopping in the southern portions of the Morganza to the Gulf system, those sites were construction sites where we were actively raising those levees, and so the overtopping that you did see were active construction sites where we were trying to get those levees raised in the event that we did have a storm surge. I do want to say that much of our efforts today with the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority were dewatering the areas that took on heavy rainfall across South Louisiana. We did have to reposition some of our large pumps from southeast Louisiana to south central and southwest Louisiana, particularly in Vermilion, St. Mary, and Point Capee parishes. And then a quick update on Plaquemines Parish. The Point Celeste and the West Point of Lahash segments where you have seen some flooding on the Corps of Engineers construction sites there. Both of those sites have been addressed. There is no additional flooding in those areas. And so our attention over the next day or so will be focused on the Myrtle Grove area where you had an overtopping in the back levee in the Myrtle Grove area. We've deployed 10 additional pumps to it in South Louisiana until further notice. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. As we get to the stage of demobilizing some of the buses, we would like to encourage the public to still be patient and adhere to some of the conditions that are out there. Currently on LA 23, we have established a special traffic control to put traffic on the northbound lanes because of standing water. We also have an incident right now on Highland where we have pooling water in the inside lane, and we're asking folks to be alert and be cautious as you travel through there. Over the next coming days, the next few days, what you will see is the Department of Transportation going out, inspecting bridges for scour, inspecting shoulders to make sure that they're still stable to protect the roads, and so be alert. Put your cell phones down. And I would also encourage folks to still use 511 because while we still have some potential rain coming through the area, you may have some opportunities of flash floods or down tree limbs and things of that nature. The department has already been moving debris from the roads all the way up to North Louisiana, down from Terrebonne Parish. So we've covered just about every stretch of where Hurricane Barry made its footprint. And so we've had tremendous success with our motor assist patrol. I would be remiss if I didn't echo what the governor said about the school systems providing their assets. And the last thing, I just want to publicly thank the governor for his leadership because this is a collaborative effort among the cabinet, federal officials, and local government. And it's just been a pleasure to serve the people of Louisiana with you and the people that are up here on this stage today and all around the state. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
There are still 7 open shelters in the state right now with about 166 people in them. Those numbers are changing rapidly as people feel like it's safe to get home. That includes the 88 patients from a nursing home that are up in the mega shelter that the governor mentioned. The biggest shelters left outside of that mega center are F.G. Clark here in Baton Rouge and Bolton Avenue in Rapides Parish. This event, we had thousands of people text or call 211, and that system worked beautifully, and we're excited about that new capacity and capability to bring into our relief efforts. So we're very grateful to the 211 partners and the United Ways that make that possible, and we thank all the partners across the state that work so hard to keep our people safe and to get them home safely in and out of shelters.
Thank you.
Good evening. The Louisiana Department of Health continues to monitor medical facilities. Most have power. There are 5 on generator power, but if you need to use an emergency room, they're all open. Really complimenting the Louisiana National Guard, Acadian Ambulance, and the Emergency Response Network for our early morning evacuation of Iberia Medical Center. Everyone was safely moved to other hospitals throughout the state. We almost had a similar evacuation for Franklin Foundation Hospital, but we're able to have those generators come back on, and now the power is there as well. Do be aware, as the governor has said multiple times, that standing water may not be safe. There may be electrical currents in it. There could be toxic substances. There could be sharp objects. Just stay away from it. Just wait till it clears. In addition, we've had a lot of questions about algal blooms. Although the churn may have reduced those for the moment because of the low salinity of Lake Pontchartrain, we expect those to come back. Do be aware, if you see algal blooms, don't go near them. They may have toxic substances. Our website, Louisiana Department of Health, will have regular updates, and we'll be testing those when it's safe to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So the Louisiana National Guard has maintained about 3,000 soldiers on duty through today, positioned predominantly across South Louisiana, ready to respond if and when we were needed. However, we will start right-sizing tomorrow morning, and we will start focusing more into the south-central Louisiana area and then more towards North Louisiana so that we are positioned there if we are called upon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. We have demobilized our pet shelters. All the animals are back with their owners, have went home, so that's very good. I've been in contact with Undersecretary Bill Northey, USDA, and State Director Craig McCain. What we're going to do tomorrow, the executive directors from each parish will be out doing an initial survey of crop damage and livestock losses. That will be followed up over the next 2 weeks with a very definitive assessment, and then a report will be formulated. And it's necessary we do it over the next 2 weeks. We did receive, some damages to our crops, and also to in some areas where we had livestock that was subject to flooding. Depending on what the weather does over the next 2 weeks, we'll determine what the overall damages will be. Once that assessment is made, if it reaches certain federal levels, then I will be asking our governor to submit a request to Secretary Perdue for a secretarial declaration of disaster. If we get a secretarial declaration of disaster, it will kick in a number of programs under the Farm Bill, low-interest loans, also emergency assistance for livestock. Will also kick in a number of programs to rebuild and rehabilitate the land. We will be traveling tomorrow towards the southern part of the state and the affected areas, and then Tuesday up through central Louisiana and northern Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and certainly I will sign that request if you present it to me, and we'll do that. I want to thank you for your leadership and your personal presence here at the UCG for each one of our meetings, and I really appreciate that. So with that, we're going to open for questions. Greg?
So, Governor, I know there's a sense of relief, but I know you're also mindful that there was some damage done in some areas that were hit. So what area, as you briefed, is the hardest hit?
Well, look, it's really hard to answer that question at present, and in fact, over the next several days, we will start our preliminary damage assessments that will be run out of GOSEP here with some of our federal partners, particularly FEMA, to go out and take a look and see where the damages occurred. And right now, we are still very much in the response mode, not the recovery mode, and so I don't want to venture a guess as to those areas that were impacted the most. But we know that our levees in Plaquemines Parish, the back levees, we know that Lafitte, we know that Grand Isle, we know that Terrebonne, we know St. Mary, we know other places where we've been in a significant flood fight, and it's not until the water recedes and then you know exactly what you're dealing with, because while we don't believe the integrity of any of our main levees has been compromised, there's going to be a lot of inspections that have to take place to confirm that. And obviously, we have to be diligent and timely about doing that because we're in hurricane season. We don't know when the next time is going to be that we get a storm. We assume it can be very quickly. So we're going to be out and about, and that's why this really isn't over. It's also one of the reasons why the National Guard can't just all go home tonight. We've got thousands of pieces of equipment that have to be maintained. Everything has to be cleaned. The preventive maintenance checks and services, what we used to at least call PMCS, is still what we do, right? All of that has to be done, and so this is, it's not like it's a light switch. You just flip it on and off. We're going to be many more days dealing with this, and certainly we're going to work with all the local government to do these damage assessments, and then we're going to have more information for you as that plays out.
Governor, in Iberia Parish, do you know any details? Was it just a matter of the medical center taking on water?
No, it was an electricity issue, and that has been a bigger issue than taking on water. It was electricity, and again, I just want you to think about the number of folks, many of whom were very medically fragile, who had to be evacuated from a multi-story hospital without power, meaning National Guardsmen and others were carrying patients down stairwells. And all of that happened safely. It happened smoothly. And then it wasn't like we had the ability to bring them all to one location. So we used the Louisiana Emergency Response Network, LEARN. We knew exactly what capacity the various hospitals in the area had. We matched up the capacity with those that were most appropriate for the particular patients involved based on their acuity. And we were able to make that happen. And actually, by 6 o'clock, it was complete. And in at least one instance, during transport to one of the other hospitals, we found out that they needed to be redirected because that hospital had temporarily lost power. So the LEARN network performed extremely well. It's one of those things that most people know nothing about, but it's something that's incredibly important for the state of Louisiana. But it, like most of the evacuations that we did after the storm came ashore, was a function of electricity, not of water intrusion.
As far as you know, everybody rescued is okay?
Yes. Yes, we don't, I haven't received any reports of fatalities outside of some accidents that we had today, and I know of one very significant accident in North Louisiana in Webster Parish, but I don't even know if that one would be deemed as weather-related, Colonel Reeves? Yes, so but that was at least, there were 2 fatalities there and 2 very serious injuries, but I don't believe that we will determine that it was weather-related. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just have one more question. General, so we still, are all 3,000 men and women activated still, or will you just keep 1,000 or 500?
We will slowly start ramping down, if you will, through this week. Tomorrow, we'll be somewhere 1,600, 1,700 maybe still on duty. The next day we'll be down around 1,000. But as the governor said, we have to stay positioned for any potential search and rescue type stuff or commodities or security missions. But also we got to return our equipment and we have to service it and make sure that it's ready to roll the next time that it's needed. Yes, sir.
And we anticipate that by Thursday he's going to be pretty much back down to normal operations. But if we don't do this now, then we have to guess at when we might have to need them again and activate them 2 or 3 days early to go and pull the equipment out and service it all and make sure that it's functioning properly. Any other? Yes, sir.
2 questions. First, how many customers are affected by power outages?
I don't have.
Last count, Governor, was 97,000. It may be lower than that now.
Yeah. Okay, so just under 100,000. At the height, it was 188,000.
Yes.
But again, those 188,000, that undercounts the amount of service restorations that occurred because many of those people lost power multiple times. So we're just below 100,000 now. We think that Assumption Parish should come back on pretty quickly because we had particular problems on trunk lines that when those are resolved, the distribution lines we believe are in good shape, and so they will be able to basically flip that power back on and get service to almost the entire parish. The others are going to be a little more difficult in Iberia and in St. Mary.
Other question, you mentioned several things like the new levee system coming on down and drainage and so forth. Had you had anything you've implemented that this storm was able to, for lack of a better word, be a dry run for?
Well, I think I'll let Chairman Klein of the CPRA answer that question. There were several things that we've done that I know that paid off in this storm around the HRRA, the Hurricane Risk Reduction System in the greater New Orleans area. I will tell you the fact that we went to the Bayou Chene in St. Mary Parish and put in that provisional or temporary floodgate by sinking the barge proved to be very, very helpful because it allowed portions of 5 parishes to drain out and create capacity for storm surge so that storm surge didn't automatically and right away intrude people's homes and businesses. And I look forward to the day in the not too distant future when that $80 million that we've committed to a permanent floodgate at that location, that floodgate is in place. And rather than having to go out and find and sink a barge and tie it in with riprap on the shoulders and sheet piling, we'll be able to just go in and push a button and make that happen in a couple of hours. But with respect to the larger question that you asked, I'm going to ask Chairman Klein to come up and answer that.
I don't think we've identified anything that's given us any concern at this point. I think what this storm did do is showed us what worked really well. And so, as the governor mentioned, the Bayou Chene barge gate. And so the latest statistic we saw there was that barge, which is a temporary structure, was holding back about 4.5 feet of water. So if you wouldn't have had that barge in place, you would have had further inundation in Assumption, Iberville, St. Mary, Terrebonne areas. So I think that worked really well. I think some of the large-scale floodgates that were just recently built over the last 2 to 3 years, the majority of which was under this administration, I think functioned beautifully. So I think that, as the governor mentioned in his earlier remarks, I think once we really get our head around the assessments, when we go and look at the levees where they were overtopped and see what protective measures we need to address moving forward, I think we'll have a better sense of what we need to do better moving forward. But as far as we can tell, all hurricane protection systems around the state functioned exactly how we hoped they would.
Any other infrastructure things that were new that tested out well?
I will probably the 3 the permanent pump stations that were installed along Lake Pontchartrain. So we have the Western Closure Complex, which is right there in the intercoastal. It's the largest pump station in the world. We have operated that structure before, but I think that there were 3 pump stations, what should we call the permanent canals, pump stations on the permanent canals there, where it was the first time where we have operated those pumps, and that was the last remaining component to be finished in the hurricane risk reduction system around the greater New Orleans area. So it was interesting to finally see all of the different components in that system work synergistically together, and so I think it did exactly what we wanted it to do.
I think there was at least one other area that I want to call out that worked extremely well, and this wouldn't be transparent to most people who watched what unfolded. But while the rainfall predictions that we got, the forecast from the National Weather Service were overestimated, the storm surge was pretty much correct, and CPRA and others were able to take that information and model what we thought would happen as it related to the impact on our levee system. And we were able to identify in advance those areas where we thought would need the most attention. And in fact, those were the areas that needed the most attention, and we had already not only identified them, but we had put resources there to address them. And this includes the backwater levee, or the back levee, I should say, in Lower Plaquemines Parish in the Myrtle Grove area. And so it allowed us to respond much more quickly. As a result, that wasn't as bad as it could have been because we fortified the levee in advance. We were there to effect repairs as soon as the conditions allowed us to do so. And as a result, for example, Highway 23 never closed. Had we not done that work in advance, we can't say that that would have happened, that it would have transpired exactly the way it did. So we learn lessons through technology and better modeling and things like that. I can just tell you, it's never perfect, and we always learn lessons, and we can always improve. But I am very proud of the work that was done and in advance to make sure that the people of Louisiana were as safe as they could possibly be during the storm. Any other questions? Well, again, I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank the media, because this is how we principally communicate with the people of Louisiana. And if you weren't as diligent as you are and showing up and making sure that they're getting accurate information, they really would be lost and dependent upon social media, which quite often has erroneous information out there. So I want to thank you all, and I want to thank the people of Louisiana who really did take this seriously, who responded appropriately for the, in the largest part at least, and they were patient and they were prepared. And I want to remind everyone, it's just the middle of July. Typically, it is the latter part of August and September when we see the most hurricane activity. There's no reason to think that that won't also be the case this year. So just like we do after-action reviews here to figure out what we can do better as a state, communities and families, you need to do your own after-action reviews and try to figure out how you can be better prepared and postured when the next hurricane or other severe weather event hits. Thank you so much, and God bless.